To keep yourself updated, subscribe to Indigolearn and click the bell icon and download our app OneFin to start learning on the go.
Friends, how are you guys doing?
Fine, sir.
All right. So let's do one thing. Let's quickly run through the three topics that we have, chapters 10 to 12, and then we will address all the doubts that we are having. Are you guys also able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. So see, the 10th chapter is basically process and operating costing. So when we discuss about costing, we are always trying to ascertain the value of the goods that we are manufacturing and we are selling. So in this topic, the prime focus is the costing of goods, which kind of go through multiple processes. Let's say process 1, process 2, process 3, or A, B, C. So wherever we have a chain of events, and essentially the product has to go through different processes, then instead of trying to determine the cost per unit standalone, what we rather do is we try to understand what is the cost of the process and then distribute the cost of that process over the goods that are manufactured. So essentially, we treat each process as a cost center. We accumulate all the cost for the process, and then we kind of determine what is the cost per unit in a particular process. Now, also what happens here is we need to understand that, the goods from one process are going to get transferred to the second process. So when we are transferring the goods from one process to another process, the cost is also going to get transferred. And one more, interesting aspect that can come in, especially when we are doing process costing, is just imagine that I am the person responsible for carrying out process 1. All right. And some other person is responsible for carrying out process 2. But the catch is the salary or the remuneration, the bonus of each of these two individuals is dependent on how the cost efficiency is there in a particular process. In that case, sometimes we may also transfer goods from one process to another process at profit. So we can have some cases where there is profit element also involved. So see, as we do in every chapter, the idea in process costing is also going to be simple. Accumulate all cost based on the nature, whether it is direct or indirect. Now here we will try to understand direct or indirect in relation to the process, but whatever is going to go to a particular process, we are going to capture here process wise. So we are going to make something called as process accounts. So typically raw material, process 1, process 2, process 3, and then the finished goods. Again, the costs are not going to be any different. The costs are all going to be same: material, direct labor, your direct expenses, and overheads. What are the overheads? Indirect material, indirect labor, and indirect expenses. Now this direct and indirect distinction is on the basis of the process. Whatever is directly attributable to the process, we are going to classify it as direct. So now friends, here what is important is the treatment of normal loss, abnormal loss, and abnormal gain. See, as a thumb rule in costing, whatever is directly attributable to the product, all right, we consider as direct. Everything else as indirect. Anything that is planned, accepted, anticipated, and within the normal range is going to be called as normal. Anything which is over and above the normal, planned, anticipated, standard, budgeted, all these are interchangeable terms. We use it in different circumstances. Anything other than the normal, any deviation, any unplanned, any unanticipated is going to be your abnormal loss. Now, normal cost or the normal loss has to be absorbed by good units, but any abnormal item, what are we going to do? We are going to debit it directly to the costing P&L. So whether we do service sector costing or process costing or any other type of costing, this basic fundamental thumb rule is not going to change. So normal process loss, good unit should absorb it. Any abnormal item, whether it is gain or loss, is going to be taken to the costing P&L. Now in process costing, the next interesting aspect or the next tricky part is going to be your WIP. See, when we have WIP, that is work in progress. So there is some items, there is some material which is in progress at the beginning of the period. And then when we are, ending the period, we have transferred the finished goods, but something is still lying in WIP. So when we have such WIP, we need to compute something called as equivalent units. So how many units have we kind of, done during this period? See, why do we need equivalent units? I'll just give you a nutshell. If we have no opening stock and we have no closing stock, that means whatever has been, introduced, whatever we have inputted is processed and has been transferred to the next process. All right. So if I have 1000 units of input, I have done something with those entire 1000 units. There is no loss involved, entire 1000 has been transferred. If there is loss, maybe if it is normal loss, the good units will absorb it. If it is abnormal loss, we will transfer it to the costing period. But for a moment, just assume that you have some work in progress. Now, why do we call it work in progress? We call it as work in progress because it is not fully complete. If it is not fully complete, then we need to understand how much of it is completed. Is it 10% complete, 20% complete, 80% complete, or 100% complete? How much is it complete in terms of material? How much is it complete in terms of labor and overhead? All right. Why do we need to understand this? We need to understand this because we need to understand how much work has been carried out during the period. All right. Now, sir, what difference will it make? It will make a difference. In fact, one of our student friends has also asked this query. Sir, why, WIP is being considered separately when we are using FIFO and weighted average? So under FIFO, it is first in, first out. So when we are transferring goods from one process to another process, the assumption is the opening WIP has been completed first and transferred to the next process. And then we have transferred whatever is the work carried out during the period. But if we were to use weighted average, we will say whether we are out of opening stock or, during the period, it is not going to make any difference. We are going to compute a weighted average cost and we are going to make the transfers at average. Friends, just give me a moment. Yeah. So the equivalent units under FIFO, we need to include this as a part of your equivalent units computation. But under weighted average, we are not going to include it as a part of your computation. In fact, there is a small difference in treatment that we will have to really look at. So what is the difference? What I will do is I'll come back to it when we, take up the doubt of one of the students and we'll address it there. But what you need to understand is work in progress. So when you're practicing and when you're solving, WIP problems are something that you should definitely look at. And equivalent units is certainly something that you need to consider. In fact, you can, make a note of this particular table where you have comments given by the institute. So how to treat the opening WIP under FIFO method and what to do under the average method. So it is very clearly and categorically given why, and there is a logic also involved behind it, which probably we can look at when we are discussing the doubt. So what are the process costing methods? FIFO and weighted average, as we were discussing. And then the inter-process profits. Why do we need inter-process profits? If we were to evaluate the performance of particular process, and if we were to, treat it as a profit center, then we will transfer the goods. Usually, see, when we are transferring from one process to another, we should transfer it at cost, but we may also transfer it at profit. But see, when I take money from one pocket and put it in other pocket, is it going to be profit? Absolutely not. Profit will be earned only when it is sold to an outsider third party who is going to give us money. So from a control perspective, from a evaluation perspective, you may call it as profit, process related. But when we do the overall balance sheet preparation, when we do the overall evaluation for the company, we need to eliminate. So for that reason, whenever we are doing problems where we have cost and profit, we will have to clearly indicate what is the cost involved, what is the profit involved. Because end of the day, profit can be earned only when we are selling it to the outsider. Otherwise, everything else is notional. So that also is a trick area that you should kind of keep in mind. So these are basically the important points that we should look at when we are addressing process costing. So one, the treatment of equivalent units, that is very important. Second, the treatment of problems where we have transfers with profit. So kind of focus on these two. If you're able to do these two, then you cannot go wrong with process costing. So these are certain, important points which I wanted to throw light on. Then let's go to the next chapter, which is your chapter 11. Friends, are you able to see the chapter 11 PDF?
Yes, sir.
All right. So the 11th chapter is basically, joint products and byproducts. So what exactly is a joint? What is a byproduct? See, when we are having a common process, so if we are putting raw material through a common process, and when we do the processing activity, if we get more than one product, if I'm having single raw material input and single, finished goods as output, then we will not talk about joint product byproduct. But if we are having one input or maybe 2 or 3 inputs, common inputs, what we call it as, and these common inputs, when commonly or jointly processed, are going to give us one or more output. Rather, I will correct myself, 2 or more output. So if one it is there, then it is not joint product byproduct. If 2 or more are going to come, then we are going to call it as joint product and byproduct. Now, when will we call something as joint product and when will we call it as a byproduct? See, that distinction is important because the entire treatment of costing is going to change. We will call something as a byproduct if there is only one main product and the second product that we are getting is unimportant or it has no significant value. So there is one main product and the other is just secondary. There is one important product, the other is secondary. Then it is byproduct. All right. There may be a case where there are 2 important products and then one third product, which is unimportant or not so significant. Then in that case, we will have 2 products which are equally important or significant. Those 2 we will call as joint products and the third one we will call as byproduct. So joint products where they have equal importance or significant prominence, then we call them as joint product. If there is something which is not so important, then we call it as byproduct. Now, at a very broad level, what difference does a joint product and byproduct make? If it is a byproduct, all right, we are not going to do costing of that byproduct. What we are going to basically do is whatever net realizable value we are going to get of that byproduct, we are going to deduct that from the cost of the main product. But if it is a joint product, then we are going to take the total cost and try to distribute, try to understand how we can kind of apportion, how we can kind of divide the cost between the joint product. So basically for joint products, we are going to talk about division of cost. If there is a byproduct, we will take the cost of that, net realizable value of that byproduct deducted from the cost of the main product. So at a broad level, that is the difference. Now, what is the question that we need to answer here? Sir, there are common inputs. There is a common process. By these common inputs and common process, we are going to get some output. Now, this output, if it was one product, the entire cost of the inputs and the process would be absorbed by this one product. But if there are 2 main products, which we call it as joint products, then how much cost should each product take? How should we distribute the cost? So there are various methods which we are going to study in this, and that is called as apportionment of joint cost. So we can do it on the basis of the number of units, the weight of each of the joint product, or we can do it on the basis of the sale value at the split off point, or we can do it on the basis of the net realizable value after further processing. So which method to adopt? We will adopt the method which the question is asking us to adopt. So usually they are going to give us information, and they are also going to specify what you should consider as a method to, kind of distribute the joint cost. So this topic is all about that. So we are going to have meaning of byproducts and joint products. How are we going to apportion the joint cost, and how we are going to treat the treatment of byproducts in the cost account? So answer is simple: apportionment of joint cost. Several methods are there. The question is going to tell us which method to use. As far as treatment of byproducts is concerned, we are going to kind of, by and large, if the value is small, insignificant, deduct it from the cost of the main product. So let's quickly run through what are the methods of apportionment. So the first method is physical units method. So we will see how many units of first product, how many units of second product. We will use this proportion in order to split the cost. Second will be net realizable value at the split off point. If I get product A and product B, maybe these products cannot be sold at their split off point. A, we will have to independently further process. B, we will have to independently further process. And then after further processing, we are going to sell product A, product B. All right. Now, in order to further process product A, we are going to incur some expenses. These are called as further processing cost. Likewise, B will also have some further processing cost. Only then we can sell. So we will take the final sale value of A and B. From that, we will deduct the further processing cost. And normally, this we will consider it as the net realizable value at the split off point. We will use this as a proportion and go over. In some cases, the question may also tell us that, look, profit element also, notional, approximate profit element also you deduct, because whenever you are selling the goods, finally you will also have profit, right? So the question, if it is giving information, that profit also we will eliminate. And then the third method is the technical estimate. So we will do a scientific evaluation, we will do a technical evaluation, and then based on engineer's input or some technical input, we will say, okay, this much amount of the cost belongs to product A and the balance belongs to product B. So broadly, these are the methods that are going to be used. So this is the, net realizable value at the split off point, which I was referring to. You can take the sales value after further processing. From that, you deduct the profit margin if indicated in the question separately. Usually, I have not seen questions where they give this profit margin. If it is there, well and good. If it is not there, whatever further process cost or further selling and distribution cost we have, that we will deduct in order to arrive at the NRV. And then we will use that as a proportion to go ahead. So you have questions on those methods. Ideally, I would suggest, kind of look at one question each on the method while you're doing your revision. Now, what is the treatment of the byproduct? So basically what they are saying, if the value is very, very, very insignificant, very small, then don't even bother to take it, to the cost of the main product in terms of reducing it from the cost of the main product. Directly credit it to the P&L and get done with it. If it is very small, insignificant. If the value is, let's say, a little significant, though not as important as the main product, all right. If it was as important as the main product, we would call it as joint product. Because it is not as equally important, that is why we are calling it as byproduct. Then in that case, you deduct it from the total cost of the main product, the sale proceeds. So that is the treatment that we are going to adopt. That is as far as, joint products and byproducts is concerned. I feel this is a pretty kind of straightforward, and this is one of the easiest topics that are there in the entire syllabus. Then let's come to the third topic, which is your service sector costing. Now see, service sector costing, the scope and the potential is unlimited. The institute can get really creative when they are giving questions out of service sector costing. They can give a question on hospital, school, transport industry, logistics industry, maybe a theater, maybe, a bank, a IT firm, a software company, or whatever they may please, an insurance company. So the potential of creativity is unlimited. But friends, please understand one thing, that at the heart of this topic is costing. Basically, whatever money we are going to incur, we are going to call it as cost. That cost we need to classify. We need to, kind of categorize, and then eventually arrive at the total. Now, once we know the total cost, that total cost has to be divided by the, it has to be divided by some unit of measurement. It can be, in case of a school, per student, or it can be per class, or it can be per batch, or it can be per course. In case of a hospital, once we summarize the total cost, it can be per treatment, per operation, per patient, per patient day, or per bed day. In case of, let's say, passenger transport, it can be per passenger, it can be per kilometer, it can be per trip, it can be per passenger kilometer. In case of a software company, it can be per application, it can be per transaction process, so on and so forth. So what is important here is basically two parts. One is the summarization of cost, and then second, understanding what is the unit of cost, what is the cost unit that we are going to use. Generally here in service sector costing, we are going to have composite units. So if you have an idea about the composite units that can be used, then probably this topic is also going to be easy. Now, if they ask us cost per truck, then we have to summarize all the cost on a per truck basis. If they ask us cost per trip, then we have to, kind of summarize the cost on that trip basis. So our classification between running cost, operating cost, and maintenance cost or fixed cost is going to depend also on the kind of summation that we are doing. So when you get a question from service sector costing, understand one thing, in what context are they asking you? And second, what is the cost unit that we are going to use? Once we know that, then it is good to go. So let's look at, few cost unit examples. So yeah, we can have transport, hotel, hospital, IT, toll roads, educational institution, insurance, financials. The potential is unlimited. So basically this table is going to be your important table. What kind of cost units can be used? Passenger kilometer, quintal kilometer, ton kilometer, kilowatt hours, per patient day, room per day, per bed, per operation, etc. So once we kind of understand, look, we have to summarize the cost, identify the cost unit, divide. That's it. Then all the questions are going to be simple. They can give whatever they want. Also, in this topic, in service sector topic, if they want to create kind of complications, then what they will do is they will, kind of try to somewhere introduce the concept of equivalent units. So what they can say, they'll say, okay, there is a school which is operating a school bus for the pickup and drop of the students. But one student is coming from 5 kilometers far, the other student is coming from 10 kilometers away. Do you think we have to charge same from both the students? Answer obviously is going to be no. So they will say, okay, up to 5 kilometers you use one rate, beyond 5 kilometers you use 2x, double the rate. So they may, kind of create categorization like that. So in that case, what we have to do is we have to find out the equivalent units. So we will say, okay, the students who are traveling up to 5 kilometers, let's consider it as X. Then automatically the students who are, kind of traveling more than 5 kilometers, it will become 2X if we were to charge double. So that becomes the equivalent number of units where they can, kind of play around. So that we need to, kind of address. And then one topic which I feel that, sometimes they may ask, and there's a good chance that they can give if they have to give a question on service sector for 5 marks, is the question on absolute ton kilometers and commercial ton kilometers. It is no rocket science, but then, we tend to make mistakes in the examination. In fact, I remember when I was giving my paper back then in Inter, this question had come in my examination. And unfortunately, I, made a mistake in answering. So though it is very simple, but then I got confused. So I would suggest, kind of easy 5 marks if it comes in the examination, but you'll have to be a little careful. Absolute is the weighted average basis and commercial ton kilometer is the simple average basis. There are a couple of questions that are there in the institute material and which has come previously. I would recommend that you, kind of go through that. Also, whenever we are preparing a cost sheet for service sector costing, we generally kind of classify the cost in these 3 categories. So you have the fixed cost or the standing charges, the variable cost or operating expenses, and then the semi-variable cost or maintenance expenses. Now see, fixed, variable, semi-variable, you may kind of, get a feeling that driver salary is a fixed cost, because irrespective of the number of kilometers, driver salary is going to remain the same. But when you look at the solution, they will take it as a operating expense. So you don't strictly go by fixed, variable and semi-variable, but kind of look at it from a operations perspective. So driver is a part of the main operation. So it becomes operating expense. That kind of stuff is what I'm talking about. So, as you practice couple of questions, you will become more comfortable and familiar with these 3 classifications. And then, the questions are kind of very much revolving around it. It's usually summarization of the cost and dividing by the composite cost unit that we identify. So, that was what I wanted to, throw light on. Now, in case you're having specific questions, you can kind of ask and then we can address them. And there were, few questions which students have shared with me in advance, that also we'll look at it. So first, I'll just throw open any quick questions that you guys have. Anyone? All right. So that being the case, let me jump directly into the doubts. All right. So there are a couple of questions which are based on standard costing, which I would not want to address at this point of time. Maybe we will take up those couple of questions on standard costing when we do the standard costing revision in the next week. Let me take questions which are more from the current topics that we are discussing. All right. So let me look at illustration 4. All right, I'm again sharing my screen. All right, so this is a question from process costing where we have WIP involved. So let me quickly run through the question. Opening work in progress 1000 units. Now these 1000 units are 60% complete. The cost of which was 1,10,000. Units introduced during the period 10,000 units. Cost of which is 19,30,000. Transferred to the next process 9,000 units. Closing work in progress 800 units, 75% complete. So here what we need to understand is, see, if we are using FIFO method, that means we are going to talk about first in, first out. So out of the 9,000 units which we have transferred to the next process, the assumption under FIFO will be the first 1,000 units are out of opening stock. And the balance 8,000 units are out of the current period transfer. Now, what difference is it going to make? It is going to make a huge difference. And what is that difference? See, in terms of the 1,000 units from opening stock, how much work have we done on those units during the current period? These were already 60% complete in the last year. Only 40% of it has been done in the current period. Likewise, for the closing WIP, out of the 800 units that are there, 75% of that has been completed. So that means 600 units have been worked upon during the period. So if I have to, summarize this 19,30,000 rupees, whatever we have spent, if we have to look at it in terms of FIFO, we have spent it for what? We have spent it for completing the 40% of opening stock, completing 75% on 800 units of closing stock, and whatever we have introduced during the period. Agreed? So that is the total amount of cost and the number of units that have gone into. So when I am doing equivalent units calculation for FIFO, we will take 1000 units, 40%, 400 units we have done during this period, 8,000 units from fresh inputs. So that is 9,000 total. Then we have 800 units in closing stock, which is 75% complete, 600. So if I take 9,000 plus 800, we are having about 9,800. But on the other hand, we had 1000 units of opening WIP and 10,000 units were introduced. So totally we had introduced 11,000 units. Out of those 11,000 units, we have account for only 9,800. So 9,800. So balance 1,200 units is a loss. Now, how much of it is normal loss? How much of it is abnormal loss? That depends upon the information given in the question. Let us go back and complete the question. So normal loss is estimated at 10% of total input, including units in process at the beginning. So they are saying this 11,000 units, whatever we have introduced, 10% of that is normal loss and balance 100 units is the abnormal loss. So cost of normal loss to be absorbed by good units. So equivalent units we take 0. Abnormal loss 100% always, whichever method you use, because the cost of abnormal loss has to be absorbed by abnormal units to be taken to the costing P&L. So that means we have carried out 9,100 units of equivalent work during this period. And how much is the cost that we have incurred? We have incurred 19,30,000. Out of that, 11,000 is the scrap sale value, which we read further in the question. It will talk about it. So 10% of total inputs in process at the beginning, scrap realization is 10 rupees per unit. Scraps are 100% complete. So 19,19,000 is the effective cost divided by 9,100 units. We have 210.88 as the equivalent unit cost. All right. Now, the doubt which the student had was, sir, why are we considering this 1,10,000 separately? See, when I kind of go to the total cost of the product, for the opening stock of 1,000 units, 60% was complete in the last year only. The cost of that has been incurred in the last year only. It has come forward as a part of my opening stock. So cost of that 1,10,000 plus for completing the balance based on the equivalent units to 10.88, that proportion we will take. So that is how we are going to arrive at the total cost evaluation. Now, if it was weighted average method, under weighted average method, we are not going to separate opening stock and during the year. We are going to say, okay, we are going to compute the weighted cost any which ways. So let's consider the entire units as complete. Let's add 1,10,000 of opening cost also to the current year cost and then divide. So when we go to the next question, which is asking us essentially to do this entire calculation on a weighted average method, here what we are doing is we are saying, okay, 11,000 units were introduced. Okay, 9,000 units were transferred to the next process. We don't care whether it is out of opening stock or out of current year production. 9,000 transferred. 1,100 is the normal loss. 800 closing WIP, which is 75% complete. Abnormal loss 100, which is 100% complete item. Everything remains same. So here equivalent units is 9,700. See, in the previous FIFO method, equivalent units was how much? 9,100. Here we are having in weighted average 9,700. The difference is 600 units. Basically, 60% of this 1,000. So we are saying that 1,000 also we are now computing as a part of the equivalent number of units completed. So if we are saying total 9,700 units complete, we have to consider the total cost also. So when we divide the cost, we will take the opening cost of 110. See, under FIFO, we did not include those 600 units in equivalent calculation. That is why we did not include 1,10,000 also. But in weighted average, we are including that opening and considering, as a part of our equivalent unit computation, because any which ways we have to calculate weighted average. So that is why we are including the cost here. So 1,10,000 plus what is the cost incurred minus scrap value, totally divided by 9,700. So, Nisam, are you clear with why we are doing this?
Yes, sir.
All right. I hope I kind of cleared your doubt.
Yes, sir.
And I hope you're also able to identify what is the difference between the two.
Yes.
Then
Sir, in this illustration 5, we are also adding the opening WIP equivalent number of units as well as the cost, right?
Correct.
That is what. Yeah, I got
So
it.
in weighted average, we are including the number of units also, and we are including its cost. So it's forming part of my weight also and the amount also.
Okay, sir. Yeah, got it.
So which is the other question doubt that you're having, which are relevant to these topics? So you had operating costing illustration 6. So in fact, the next illustration only.
Yeah.
All right. Which is based on the profit. Okay. So let me quickly run through the question. A Limited produces product AXE, which passes through two processes before it is completed and is transferred to finished stock. So we have process 1 account, process 2 account, and the finished stock account. For each one of them, opening stock, direct material, direct wages, factory overhead, closing stock. And then look at this interesting point, inter-process profit included in opening stock. The stock that we are having in process 1 does not include any profit element. The stock which is there opening in process 2 has 1,500 rupees of profit element and the finished goods has 8,250. Now, output of process 1 is transferred to process 2 at 25% profit on the transfer price. So basically, whatever cost we are incurring, we will add 25% markup to arrive at the transfer price. Output of process 2 is transferred to finished stock. So from process 2 to finished stock, it is going to go at 20% profit on the transfer price. Stock in processes is valued at prime cost. See, in the information that they have given about cost, they have given direct material, direct wages, and factory overhead. Direct material, direct wages going to form part of our prime cost. Factory overheads will then be added to arrive at the total cost. Here they are saying, for this question, your closing stock at the end of the process should be valued at what? It should be valued at prime cost. So that is a specific requirement in the question which we have to address. If this was not there, then we would have included factory overheads also as a part of our closing stock valuation. But specific requirement, we have to respect that. Finished good stock is valued at the price at which it is received from process 2. So at whatever transfer price the goods were moved from process 2 to finished stock account, that is going to be considered. Sales were 1,40,000. Prepare process cost accounts and finished good account showing the profit element at each stage. All right. So process 1 account, what they have done is they have just summed cost. What is the opening stock? What is the direct material, direct labor, prime cost, overhead, total cost? So they have arrived at the total cost of 44,200. And obviously there is no profit involved in the process one account when it is getting goods or when it is making some expenses. But when we are transferring from process 1 to process 2, we are transferring it at a profit, and the profit involved is 25% of the transfer price. Now, how much of it has been transferred, that we don't know. The question has not given. But what they have given is the closing stock is 3,700. So we are going to take the closing stock at 3,700 and we are going to involve profit element as 0. That is one. Second, about the closing stock, they made a very important comment, a specific requirement that closing stock has to be valued at prime cost. That means, can we say that 3,700 is a part of this prime cost and balance has been consumed? So if you take up 33,700, from that you remove 3,700. What do we get? If I take 33,700 and if we remove 3,700, which is the cost of my closing stock, we get 30,000. And to that 30,000, if you add the overheads, 10,500, you will get 40,500 as the balancing figure, which is nothing but the cost of the goods transferred. And the goods are transferred at 25% of the transfer, at a profit of 25% on transfer price. So essentially this 40,500 represents your 75%. So that is one way of looking at it. Or you can say total cost is 44,200. They are saying the profit involved is 3,700. Sorry, the value of closing stock is 3,700. So if we deduct the balance is the cost of the goods transferred, that represents 75%. So we get a transfer price. Are we clear with this, Nisam?
Yes. Yes, sir. So the logic of the transfer price is, we are subtracting the total cost minus the closing stock. Now that represents 75% of transfer price, right?
Correct. So in my head, what I'm saying, look, prime cost is 33,700.
Yeah.
Out of that, 3,700 is the closing stock. So essentially 30,000 plus the overheads. That is the total cost. Or you can typically, take 44,200 minus 3,700. So that is fine. But what would be more logical is the approach which I am mentioning.
Yeah.
Then when we come to the process 2, same thing. You have something which has been transferred. You have cost which is incurred. So your total prime cost is prime cost total is 90,000. Cost wise it is 75,000 and profit wise it is 15,000. Now again here what they are saying is the closing stock is 4,500. So same logic in process 2 also. You take 75,000.
Yes.
From 75,000,
subtract
that
value of closing stock.
Value of closing stock, and then you arrive at what is the consumption. Once you know the consumption, 20%, consider it as transfer price, you arrive at what is the finished stock. All right.
Yes, sir.
Any other specific doubt from the topics which we are taking up today? Okay, you had something which is from our previous topic, which is absorption costing. Let me, just take it up. And standard costing questions, we are going to take it in the next session.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, for the final preparation, how to filter the question, like how can we decide that this question I have to do like that and all?
See, when it comes to your preparation and how you want to plan your revision, I would suggest, for each student, the set of questions or the set of topics is going to be different. It is more to do with a personal evaluation. See, now, for example, you are getting stuck with certain set of questions. So my
Yes.
basic thumb rule is, if you were able to get the solution right the first time, you will be able to do it correctly the next 100 times also.
Yeah.
Because the concept and the logic is clear. Now, the problem area is where you were stuck for the first time. So, where you get stuck or where you have doubts, you need to flag those questions. You need to make an index and keep a small summary of these questions that look in chapter 4, question number 6 is where I got stuck. And this is the particular doubt which I had.
Yes.
And this is the particular way in which it got addressed. So next time when you are revising, whether you revise the entire chapter or not, it is irrelevant. But this question definitely you have to solve. So that way is what you're doing is your weak areas you're kind of strengthening. So for each student, it is going to be different. And that is why I say the first reading is going to be the most important reading, where you actually can spend maximum time and do this, deliberation. And I have seen so many students who try to, kind of read solutions from the textbook, or who kind of, have the answer in front of them and then try to solve stepwise by looking at each step. That way is you will not understand where you're getting stuck. The best thing to do is to close the solution, try to solve on your own. Even if it is 2 steps that you're doing it correctly, does not matter. At least we know in a practical subject where we stand, which are the areas that we have to work upon. So that is what I would, really suggest. Keep a index. And for practical subjects, practice is, something that is going to help you, obviously coupled by concept. So if you are not conceptually clear, then we need to work on concept. But if we are clear with the concept, but we are getting stuck in some tricky questions, tricky adjustments, like you had, FIFO and LIFO. It's a very tricky kind of, question. We know perfectly about process. Such aspects you just keep in mind, and, that will take care.
Yes. Yes.
So you need,
Yes, sir. In the cost sheet, no.
yeah.
Sometimes, for some items, I'm getting a confusion whether it is a factory overhead, whether it is a direct expenses. Sir, for that, if I mix something from a direct expense, if I maybe from a factory,
I will always, kind of give you only one suggestion.
yeah,
Costing classification. Cost classification is always going to be relative. All right. If you feel that something you want to consider it as direct, and if you have a doubt in your mind that it can also be taken to overheads,
yeah,
write a
factory
working
overhead.
note with your assumption, saying that I am assuming for so and so reason it to be direct.
Yeah, yeah.
Alternatively, it can be considered as indirect and it can be taken to overhead. In that case, the answer is going to be different. So if you show to the examiner that, look, you are aware, but because of an assumption, you are wanting to do it a little differently, probably for that assumption being wrong, they can cut a mark, but they will not disregard the entire question that you have solved.
Okay, sir.
What was the question which you had in this? It is question 10. Okay. Practice question 10.
Sir, practice questions are very important, no?
All the questions are important.
Yeah.
So if you carefully observe whatever they have given as illustration, those similar questions are not there in practice. And what the institute is slowly doing is, after every examination, if there is a new question, they are including it as either as a practice question or as an illustration. So they are also trying to kind of build up their inventory. Yeah. So what this is, a light engineering company. Okay, a light engineering factory fabricates machine parts for customers. The factory commenced fabrication of 12 numbers machine parts. As per customer specification, expenditure incurred on the job is tabulated below. So they have given direct material, direct labor, machine facilities, machine 1, machine 2, total, overheads and the total cost. Wonderful. The overhead rate of rupees 8 per hour is based on 3,000 man hours per week. So what they are essentially saying is, How did we get this 8 per hour? We got this 8 per hour on the basis of 3000 man hours per week. That means if someone was to ask me what is the budget for this week, I can say it is 8 into 3000. That is 24,000. Likewise, the machine hour rates are based on the normal working of the machine numbers 1 and 2 for 40 hours and 45 hours. So if someone is asking me what is the budget for machine 1, it is going to be rupees 45 into 40 hours. And the budgeted overhead for machine 2 is going to be 65 into 45 hours for the week. All right. After the close of each week, the factory levies a supplementary rate for the recovery of the full overhead expenses. All right. See, basically what happens is we are going to budget the factory overheads. We are going to budget a level of activity, and on that basis, we are going to, kind of determine the fixed overhead recovery rate. But the actuals may be different. My expenditure can be different, or my level of activity can be different. Then in those cases, normally under absorption, over absorption, we are going to take it to the costing P&L. But if the under absorption, over absorption is significant, then we may consider, using a supplementary rate. And if the question is so indicating that we need to use a supplementary rate, then we are going to calculate one. Now, how are we going to calculate the supplementary rate? Supplementary rate is nothing but the actual rate. We will take what is the actual overhead. We will take what is the actual level of activity. We will calculate what is the actual rate. Then we will compare this actual rate with the rate which we have used for recovery. The differential is going to get added as a supplementary levy. So here what has happened, they are saying during the week ending, the total labor hours worked were only 2,400. Machine 1 and machine 2 had worked only for 30 hours and 32.5 hours respectively. Now, first impression is we had planned for 3,000 man hours, but we were able to achieve only 2,400. So somewhere we were not able to achieve 600 hours. So cost of that 600 hours has to be recovered at a supplementary rate. So we will have to add more overheads to whatever we have absorbed. Likewise, for machine 1 and machine 2 also, we have not utilized full capacity. Out of 40, we use 30. Out of 45, we use 32.5. So again, we're going to have additional cost, which will get added as a supplementary rate. And why are we doing the supplementary rate? Only because the question is saying and it is significant.
Sir, can I ask one question? Sir, what is the meaning of this normal working of machine number 1 and number 2 for 40 hours out of 45 hours per week? What is the inference can we make from that?
No. Let me read it. The machine hour rates are based on the normal working of machine 1 and machine 2 for 40 hours out of 45 hours per week. For 40 hours out of 45. I think it was supposed to be AND. Have they solved it using AND? Let me just check. The inferences, the normal is 40, but I am guessing institute being an institute, they must have solved it on the basis of 45.
Sir, this is also given as a standard, no? Then why they're saying it 40 hours out of 45 hours per week?
1 second. For machine 1, they have taken as per budgeted 40 only. So I think there's no ambiguity here. They are saying out of the 45-week period, 45-hour week period, see, there can be a possibility that there are 45 hours in a week, but those 5 hours are normal idle time. So the productive time that we are getting is only 40, or maybe 5 hours is normally lost for maintenance.
Yeah, okay. Sir,
so 40 hours out of 45. Yeah. And the solution is also based on 40 hours. So there is no ambiguity there. What is your doubt other than this in this question?
So nothing.
All right. So friends, unless you are having anything specific to ask, other than what we have discussed, probably we can go ahead and close this session.
Yes, sir. For costing theory, no, uh, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, for that costing theory, like there are so many theories, like should we learn all of them, or can we
What so many
learn?
theories are you referring to?
Sorry,
What are the so many theories that you're referring to?
sir. Sir, in many chapters we have so much theories, no? Theory,
See,
theory.
what I would recommend, run through previous 5 or maximum 6 years question papers and RTPs.
Yeah.
Make a list of what are the frequently asked theory questions.
Okay, sir.
After a third year, when you go to the fourth year, you will realize that there is nothing that they are asking new or different. So there are a set of standard questions, and in RTP especially,
Yeah.
or in RTP and
Yeah. MTP. Yes, sir. Sir, they have given so much questions in the practice manner, no? Is that
yeah.
important?
So I was actually coming to that. So practice manual is what we should be relating to. So the questions which are there in the practice manual,
Yeah.
those are the questions which are kind of relevant for us.
Yes.
And again, see, you need to understand the chance of they asking a theory question from standard costing
It's
is
less.
much less than what they can from the topic number 1.
Yeah.
So that kind of smart preparation you'll have to do. All right. So friends,
Sir,
with that, yeah. Sorry.
sir, one thing, the chapters which I had learned 3 or 4 months ago, no, like when I take all those chapters now, I feel that I'll not be able to remember everything. So, like for that final preparation, I think we may not be able to do all the questions. So, how can we, do the preparation so that we remember in the exam hall and all of that?
See, the easiest way to do this
Yes.
is to stay in touch. And what do I mean by staying in touch? Let's say if you can, once in 15 days, take up one question paper
Yeah.
and solve it. So solving a question paper, exam conditions 3 hours, home conditions, let us say 5 hours.
Yeah.
In 15 days, one question paper, you are in touch with the subject.
Okay, sir.
And if you lose touch, then probably, even if I kind of look at the questions after 1 year, take them some time to, kind of refresh the memory.
Yes.
Even like in case of computers, we also have random memory and permanent memory. So we will have to bring it from our storage to current memory. So
Yeah.
staying in touch is the only solution.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir, do we need to maintain that time limit, no, for 3 hours for the mock test papers?
For mock test papers, yes.
Yes.
So it's always good to train yourself and condition yourself to examination.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a nice day ahead. Probably the day is over, but still good to always
Thank you.
interact with you guys. Thank you guys. Have fun. With
Yeah,
that,
yes.
we'll close the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for clearing the doubts.
Thank you.